Automakers, investors, politicians, and others have one thing in common. They are utilizing the current automotive electrification to advance their agendas, which may include maximizing profits or strengthening their position in the market. They commonly use a range of unlawful tactics, some of which remain covered, while others are made public to achieve this goal. We'll focus in this video the top 5 EV scandals that are killing the EV market. Number 5. The America scandal electrifies. Dieselgate happened almost 10 years ago, and it's still one of the biggest scandals in car history. V2 was charged with installing software on its diesel-powered cars to pass federal emissions tests. The emissions were eventually found to be 40 times higher than permitted, sparking a scandal that cost the German automaker billions of dollars. Up until now, the business has promised to make apologies and create a brand new network of public electric car chargers called Electrify America, in addition to making sizable financial payments. One way to atone for all the air pollution was with this $2 billion investment, and today Electrify America has over 4,000 chargers across the country. But as it happened, things didn't exactly go as planned. It turns out that the intention to atone for the Dieselgate scandal was only a front for another scandal, which is part of the electric vehicle meltdown, even though it may not be as big as the Dieselgate scandal. In particular, among fast-charging networks, Electrify America has the lowest customer satisfaction rating per the latest J.D. Power reports. Another survey found that only 7.5% of the fast chargers in the San Francisco Bay Area were in use. A fifth of charging attempts, according to J.D. Power, fail for a variety of reasons, including broken cords, payment methods that malfunction, screens that are too low, and so on. In recent years, an increasing number of Americans have acquired electric vehicles. However, owners have also become aware of all the disadvantages associated with owning one of these cars, a fact that is usually overlooked by those who advocate for them. For this reason, it is not surprising that some sources estimate that 18% of electric vehicle buyers eventually switch back to gas-powered vehicles. Number 4. Tesla's secret complaint team. Undoubtedly, Tesla is the most advanced EV manufacturer in the world and is likely the only one that produces EVs that work. But even these vehicles are not as great as the company advertises them, and that specifically refers to the maximum range. Namely, most Tesla models are correct. Charging convenience is one of the main reasons, and the poor performance of Electrify America charging stations is certainly contributing a lot to the current EV market slowdown. Rise by impressive autonomy with claimed ranges that go way over 300, sometimes 400 miles. In reality, things are a little bit different, and in most cases, that number drops significantly due to the battery's vulnerability to factors like driving style, weather conditions, etc. Even such exaggerating wouldn't be much of a problem given all the battery issues customers are familiar with. The problem occurred when the Tesla owner started suspecting that the company uses rigged software with unrealistic range projections. It turned out that Tesla cars indeed use algorithms that show rosy distance projections. Once the battery falls below 50%, the software suddenly starts showing way more realistic projections, with range figures decreasing rapidly in front of drivers' eyes. The only mitigating circumstance is that Teslas are designed with a so-called safety buffer, with around 15 mi of additional range after empty battery readouts. With a significantly lower range than advertised, it wasn't a surprise to see many owners try to book their visits to dealers. But Tesla figured out how to reduce these visits by sending a message that said that remote diagnostics had determined that the battery was fine. Eventually, as the volume of complaints regarding the range increased, we learned that Tesla staff members had been told to block all of them. After a while, Tesla set up a distraction team to deal with the hundreds of cancellations that occurred each week. Things became so bad that Tesla started keeping track of how many cancellations each employee had. Neither Musk nor Tesla commented on these claims. Number 3. Remember Dash for diesel. Older generations likely recall the tax scheme that former UK Chancellor Gordon Brown implemented more than 20 years ago, which favored diesel vehicles even though diesel engines produce fewer carbon emissions than gasoline-powered vehicles. However, what officials failed to mention was that the emissions of other pollutants, such as nitrogen oxides and particulates, were significantly higher, and we're talking about things that are far more dangerous for human health. This sounds familiar, and that's precisely what politicians from around the globe are doing right now. The only difference is that the focus is on electric vehicles rather than diesel vehicles. Once again, the negative aspects of electric vehicles are not mentioned, and since there are so many of them, it is not stated that electric vehicles are not the solution for many people. Instead, EVs are marketed as zero-emission, sustainable vehicles that will save the planet. And for that reason, billions of tax dollars are being spent on various EV incentives. First of all, there are practical reasons like charging and ownership cost. Moreover, EVs are also more dangerous than gas-powered cars as they're heavier and therefore are more likely to kill or hurt more occupants of other vehicles in traffic accidents. And if we consider who's buying EVs, as well as that 90% of owners also have a gas-powered car that is utilized for lengthy journeys, it's evident that EVs won't help the environment. Instead, the current estimation suggests that even in 2050, EVs will make up no more than 20% of worldwide car traffic. According to the UN Climate Panel, that will be enough to cut world temperatures by no more than 110,000 of a Celsius degree by the end of the century. Meanwhile, the International Energy Agency determined that hybrid cars emit the same amount of CO2 as EVs over their lifetime, which is rather fascinating if we consider that hybrids are cheaper and don't have most of the EV drawbacks, especially when it comes to charging. In other words, politicians are missing to emphasize that the benefits of electric automobiles are modest while the downsides are significant. Meanwhile, they're hesitating to deal with considerably major emitters of CO2, such as energy production, agriculture, industry, etc. To remind you, passenger cars account for just 7% of global emissions. Number 2. Nika scam. Although based on a little different, but essentially the same technology, the firm called Nika and its creator Trevor Milton are an excellent example of how things work in the EV sector. We won't argue that the whole automotive electrification is constructed on an ocean of falsehoods, but it's very evident that many of its components are nothing more than the wishful thinking of various pioneers, authorities, and politicians. The reality is different and displays a significant difference between promises and performance. As noted, this issue is a wonderful illustration as it relates to a story that started a decade ago when Milton created a startup company in his basement. The idea was to develop a hydrogen fuel cell heavy-duty truck, an electric vehicle that would use hydrogen instead of batteries to store energy. 2 years later, we already saw a prototype called the 901, with Milton saying it was a pickup capable of running on its own, rather than being just a pusher. Idea truck. This idea, along with a great deal of other initiatives and scientific advancements, proved to be false in the end. In the end, Milton was accused of making several false and misleading statements. He first claimed that his pickup, the Badger, was built completely from the ground up with Nikola's parts and technology. Number 1. GM mission. Even though GM has long been seen as a fading giant, it remains one of the best options because it has recently made large investments and seems to be fully committed to an all-electric future. But plans don't always work out as expected. The company's inability to adequately acquire new technology and adjust to production is costing them billions of dollars in new EV investments. Understandably, the share price has been dropping recently given the current situation, when shareholders are very dissatisfied with the projected earnings. A quarter of the company's total value, or $10 billion, was set aside for share buybacks by GM management. Investors are well aware that the corporation would continue to waste billions on electric vehicles if it is only following government laws about widespread electrification. By the end of this decade, GM should give up on building over 1 million electric vehicles annually and instead concentrate on sustaining its profits from gasoline-powered vehicles for as long as feasible. Should this objective not be accomplished, the company and its investors might be left with nothing but bad consequences. Did you like it? Tell us what you think of the video in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting videos.